Welcome to the Reddit library. Doctors, what is the worst homemade cure a patient used for their illness? An older woman with a big, gaping foot ulcer visited her family in Indonesia. Her sister took her to a spiritual healer, who instructed her to make an ointment and apply it to the ulcer. The ointment included herbs, sheep urine, olives, human hair. The day after applying the ointment, she was to cleanse the ulcer in the ocean. After a few weeks of this, the ulcer would heal. Obviously it did not heal, and a rare mycoplasma bacteria found only in the ocean grew in her wound, and she lost her foot. There comes a point in spiritual healing where even uneducated people can tell it won't work. Spiritual healing, in my opinion, is a bit of a placebo thing, and can be comforting. But this... I knew someone who got cancer and decided to starve it instead of taking chemo. First results after the 40-day fast were promising, but not for long. He died in less than a year. The sad part is, the survival rate with chemo for this type of cancer is really high, and it was detected quite early. What kind was it? Non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Nurse here had the fortunate luck to be privy to a patient's super duper secret way of getting rid of leg cramps at night. Get a cork, not just any cork though, it must be from a bottle of red wine, and tuck it in between your toes at night. He was very sure that was the cure. That big pharma wasn't telling us. Completely irrelevant that he started taking a magnesium supplement at the same time as his newfound super cure of toe cork fondling. So big pharma, if you're reading this, we all know now. AHH, put a cork in it. Told patients to apply cream to their foot. They ignored my advice and just kept rubbing garlic over it. They later came back and I told them their foot is getting worse because they aren't using their cream and they now need to go to hospital. They ignored me and kept just rubbing garlic. Eventually they lost their foot. OMG. What is it with people and garlic? Garlic scares off disease vampires. Dermatologist here. Dude was trying to get rid of his papulopustular acne with a homemade mask, which consisted of mix of betamethasone ointment, honey, cream cheese, yogurt, banana, and makeup and cream for color. So many bad things here, and the dude developed a nodular cystic acne after 3 or so applications, which he did daily because of course. Who suggested this abomination? Various YouTube videos and his own initiative of mixing everything in a bowl to cure faster. Going by the logic, the more stuff you put in your cure, the higher the chance you will eventually hit 1 or 2 things that actually helps. I took my daughter to the doctor for a recurring ear infection when she was about 4. The doctor took one look in her ear and asked me if I had seen her putting any foreign objects into her ears, and I said no. He then took some tweezers and pulled out a small piece of what turned out to be garlic. I told him I had no idea how it got there. He said it was definitely making her ear infections worse. Turns out that her dad and stepmom had heard that garlic oil can help cure infections and they didn't have any. So instead of taking my daughter to the doctor, like they should have, they literally just shoved a small clove of garlic in my daughter's ear and left it there. I'm guessing there were some family court ramifications over that. Hoping there were. Paramedic once had a patient diagnosed with a cancerous growth on his ear. He took care of it himself with fingernail clippers. It got so infected by the time he called 911, we could see his jawbone through his cheek. What inspired him to call 911? I hope it was the jawbone. I'm the type of person who will seek medical attention upon finding out I have cancer. I'm not gonna wait until I start seeing bones and crud. I think he cut off the cancer, and some infection is what rotted the rest of the flesh away. That's how I read it, anyway. Not a doctor, but a pharmacist who works in an ER. I had a woman come in for chest pain, and when I was interviewing her for her medication history, she was telling me how bad the pain was, that she took everything in her medicine cabinet. I asked her to list what she has in her medicine cabinet / what she took. The list went: Tylenol, acetaminophen, 2 tablets, Advil, ibuprofen, 2 tablets, aspirin 2 tablets, heroin 1 to 2 points, gravel. At which point I kind of had to go, hold up, you used how many points of what? and the patient very matter-of-factly stated that she came in because the heroin didn't help with the pain at all, which in some ways I guess was a pretty reasonable course of action, since she came in since the heroin didn't work. Honestly, plus to her for not going super overboard on anything in there, if it was the amount you say. Only thing kinda sketchy about that in terms of bodily harm, assuming the heroin isn't adulterated with fentanyl or something else more harmful than heroin itself, is the Tylenol plus Advil plus aspirin stack. Did you ever find out what was wrong with them? Before it was just hyperalgesia from chronic opioid usage. My mom, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, has a patient who smokes meth because it's the only thing that helps them sleep. Pretty wacky considering Nazis in WWII used it to not sleep. Nap, I sleep like baby on amphetamines. If your ADHD is bad, stimulants will help you relax, making it easier to sleep. Paradoxically, it's also easier to stay awake. Very high doses will probably make you stay awake, and likely slightly psychotic, though. Not a doctor, but my vet friend once had a client rub butter all over her cat in hopes that the cat would lick it off because the cat had stopped eating. There's a level of reasoning in this one that's totally out of whack with how ultimately silly it is. When my previous cat had cancer, I had some success keeping her weight up by putting a little wet food on her paws. She'd lick it off, but that was on top of doing literally everything else I could to try and help her. My elderly cat is dropping weight pretty steadily, kidneys are deteriorating, but she's got a good appetite. We give her lots of treats, human food, plus 2 small cans of cat food per day, doesn't usually finish. I decarbed some CBD flour and added it to coconut oil. Been adding that to her paws every few days. Don't know if she feels any different from the CBD, since she naps 90% of the time anyway, but at least it's some extra calories. Nurse here. I used to work in a rural magnet hospital in the south. Had a patient who was there because he'd gotten athlete's foot and decided to use an old mountain remedy: soak your feet in vinegar, lemon juice, and boiling water to kill the fungus. In fairness, the original remedy probably called for merely hot water, but the guy went a little overboard with the temperature. He gave himself some nice bilateral 3rd-degree burns on his feet, but there was no sign of any athlete's foot, so he had that going for him, which was nice. I'm also a nurse that's done quite a bit of work in the south. Had a woman come in who had what was likely an infected follicle right next to her labia. She thought it would be a good idea to heat up a needle with a pocket, light it to sterilize it, and poked it. I saw her after her first treatment. Caused a big old tunneling infection around 1 centimeter in diameter parallel to her vaginal canal. Stuck a big Q-tip in probably 8 inches before I hit the end when I was repacking it. I didn't like a single thing I just heard. My aunt has this concoction of basically just rubbing alcohol and marijuana leaves, seeds, and stems, and for whatever crazy reason she thinks that if you rub it over an ache, that it will magically make it go away. Lol, she calls it the brujeria. It's like CBD oil curees, but without all that useless extraction process. Lol, clinically proven to be just as effective as CBD for curing cancer, homosexuality, amputation, and death. Not a doctor, I'm an X-ray tech in a hospital. Had a patient with a breast infection. She attempted to treat it with neosporin. When she finally came to the ER, there was just a huge gaping hole on her chest where the breast used to be. The smell in the room was overpowering, to say the least. It turns out you can't cure breast cancer with neosporin. I don't know if she survived or not. I have metastatic breast cancer. I should save this comment for those days when I'm so sick from my meds that I feel like giving up. Yeah, fatigue and upset stomach and taste changes suck. I'm eating dry toast because that's what my gut can handle. But I will never have a gaping hole in my chest, and I will have good days on these meds. I'll have a few more years than that poor lady. At least I think I will. Worth it. Chemo sucks. Beats the alternative though. Hope you get better soon. Doctor in the family told me an infant was brought into the ER incredibly ill, shaking, and vomiting from her daycare. She had a huge oral ulcer in her mouth. that her mom tried to cure by killing the bacteria, but they were out of mouthwash, so she diluted vodka in apple juice. She had the tan I see the manager haircut and threw a huge fit when CPS was called. Wow, so did she also have the deer in headlights look when CPS arrived? I'll wager that she went full Karen. Are you trying to tell me how to raise my child? This is my child. She came out of my vagina. Vodka has bacteria killing properties. I know what's better for my child than some trained medical professional. She loves vodka and apple juice, and she is a free spirit. Karen. Rural nurse here. Had a patient soak his finger in kerosene in order to make it grow back. I'm picturing the severed finger in a glass of kerosene on the kitchen windowsill, waiting for it to sprout roots like a plant cutting. Not a doctor, but the son of one. There was a guy who would go in once a year or so for checkups. He had surgery on his foot and needed it looked at regularly. My dad was the surgeon, so anyways, one day guy comes in for his apt. Says he isn't feeling well. Thinks he might have gotten the flu from his kids. No big deal. Unrelated illness happens, right? Well, he was talking to my dad before he took his shoes off. He was beaming. Yeah, I fell pretty hard, gashed my foot open, but I fixed it myself. Saved a trip to the hospital. Well, lo and behold, he has taken copper wire and sutured the gash shut. It had been a week and it was badly infected. That's where his flu-like symptoms came from. Had he waited a few more days it would have killed him. Dad took those out, dressed it, the skin had degraded too far to sew up properly, prescribed him antibiotics, and referred him to the hospital for observation. He ended up spending $3,000 on his care instead of the $200 or so for stitches in the first place. Jesus, copper wire WTFY. Use super glue or duct tape like a real American. Not a doctor, but the son of one. There was a